Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum and I'm here today at the Institute of Military Technology taking a look at a Czech VZ52/57 light machine gun. This was, as the name implies, adopted by Czechoslovakia in 1952. Well, the first version was adopted in 1952, and at that time, Czechoslovakia was using the 7.62 by 45 millimeter cartridge. This is a round that existed only in a limited geographical and chronological place because by 1957, Czechoslovakia had been pushed into using the standard Soviet 7.62 by 39 millimeter cartridge, which really made sense to standardize logistics in the Soviet-influenced countries. So 7.62 by 45 is not a bad cartridge. It's obviously 6 millimeters longer in the case. It gets about 200 feet per second more muzzle velocity. It's maybe not a super efficient cartridge for its size, but it's not bad. But at the same time, is it really that much better than 7.62 by 39? It wasn't that. The Czechs didn't give up that much by going to the standard Soviet cartridge. Anyway, in 1952, they adopted 7.62 by 45, and they adopted both a rifle and a light machine gun, both confusingly named the VZ52, the Model 52. The rifles are around in the US as surplus these days. A bunch of them came in relatively cheap because the ammunition is out there, but in very small amounts. It's expensive, it's all corrosive, it's a difficult gun to shoot a lot of. In 1957, the Czechs converted these guns to 7.62 by 39, and when they did so, they changed the designation from 52 to 52/57. Now, the VZ52/57 rifles wouldn't last very long because in 1958, the Czechs adopted the VZ58, which is absolutely a better rifle design. It's a quite good rifle design. The light machine gun stayed on a bit longer though, and that's what we have here, is one of the 7.62 by 39 millimeter light machine gun counterparts to the VZ52 or 57 rifles. Now, there's a cool thing about these machine guns, which is they're fed by 25 round box magazine, or by 50 round metallic belt. There aren't a lot of guns that have this sort of interchangeability. There are a few, the most common of them, of course, being the M249, the FN Mini-Me. But there are a few others. The Israeli Negev has this capability. They often don't end up being all that successful. This is certainly an example of one that wasn't hugely successful, but it's really cool to take a look at how the Czechs were able to take a really compact receiver like this thing has and implement this sort of modular functionality into it. So let's just dig into this and take it apart. All right, before we dig into this further, I want to start by showing you the basic operating mechanism here because it's a little unique. There is no charging handle on the side, on either side. Instead, this is actually charged by using the pistol grip itself. So there's a release lever on the left side, which you'll see in a minute. But if I depress that, I can then run the pistol grip forward. The bolt right now is in the forward position. This is an open bolt firing gun. So this is having been fired and now empty. So to charge it, I bring the pistol grip forward and then I pull it back. When I pull it back, the pistol grip has grabbed the bolt and pulled the bolt back, locks it into the rearward position, and then I'm ready to fire. Like so. To charge it again, pistol grip forward, yank it back, and there you go. The advantage to this is that there's no opening on the side for dirt to get in through a charging handle slot. The downside is you have a much harder time actually seeing into the workings of the gun, and should there be a malfunction, you don't have as much control over what the gun is doing. You don't have a direct connection to the bolt, you just have this grip which allows you to pull the bolt back, but it's harder to diagnose things. You can't see what's actually going on inside there. You'll notice it has a 2-finger trigger. That is because this is semi-auto and full auto. The 1 position is semi-auto and the bottom position, D, is full auto. So that gives you a single shot, that gives you continuous fire. The release lever that I had talked about is right here. So when I pull this down, it unlocks the charging handle from the receiver and allows it to move. We also have a safety lever back here. Up is safe, Z, abbreviated for safe, and then down is the fire position. From here, you can also see the receiver markings, VZ52/57, and then also the serial number, F4366 on the top back of the receiver, along with the factory manufacturer's code. It's got a fairly intricate rear sight on it, although it is still just an open notch sight. You have an adjustment dial up here for windage. You have a nice big knurled adjustment dial down here for elevation. And we have a readout there to give you range in hundreds of meters. The sights are offset to the left, of course, because there is a magazine, or potentially a magazine, right smack in the middle. And I guess they figured if you're going to require offset sights because there might be a magazine in use, you might as well just stick a carry handle on there too. This carry handle does not fold over. It is always in this top vertical position. So even if you're using the belt feed, you're still going to have the center of the gun obstructed by that carry handle. Now, let's take a look at the system for swapping between magazines and belts, because that's probably the coolest single feature on the gun. We do have this 25-round box magazine. You'll note that the follower, basically all of the features of this magazine are very similar to ZB26 magazines, because this is the same system, just tweaked up a bit. So you've got a big pair of lugs on the back of the follower for engaging the bolt hold open, so that when it's empty, it locks open. We have a cutout here in the side of the magazine, which is there to allow for the belt feed pull to move in and out, which you'll see in a moment. Now, we have this magazine well cover that snaps down like so that when you're not using a magazine, that giant gaping hole in the top of the gun is closed up and dirt can't get in. You can open that by simply popping the magazine release, and that has to come all the way up like so to be used. You'll note that in here are some machined features that are essential to the belt feed system. So you have to have this down to use the belt. There is also a dust cover here on the side of the gun. This covers the belt feed entry point. So when I lift that up, I now have open access into the gun for the belt, and I can slide it down like that to cover over that hole opening. On the opposite side, right here, you need a place for the belt to come out of the gun, and so there's a little dust cover up there as well. So you got 3 dust covers. One of them is engaged when you're using the belt, and 2 of them are engaged when you're using the magazine. So the belt for this gun is of the push-through type. So there's a little tab on the back of each link that you set the cartridges back, and the case head is resting against that tab. There's then a little bent up section here at the front, which this actually pushes against a feature in the top cover of the gun, which keeps the belt stable while you're pushing a cartridge out of it. A push-through belt simply means that the bolt is going to push the cartridge straight through the link. The alternative to that is a pull-out style of belt, where the cartridge is actually grabbed, pulled backwards, and then cycled either up or down into the chamber. Maxim guns have a pull-type belt, where this is a push type. This is mechanically simpler, but it does potentially limit the types of cartridges that can be used. So it's hard to do a push-through belt with a rimmed cartridge, although actually the Czechs did pull that off with the UK-59 that would follow this design by a few years. Anyway, this is a 50-round belt. It has a nice big feed tab at the front. It does not have a capacity to link belts together. The way you actually use this in the field is you have a belt box here that can clip onto, ironically, your belt. It's then got a mounting bracket right here to fit on the gun, 2 sets of detents on the cover. So I can open that up. You'll wrap your 50-round belt in there, and then you close it to this position to actually use, so that there's space for the cartridges to come out, and you can also snap it all the way closed to that position, which helps seal it against dirt and mud. Not quite perfectly, but close enough, I suppose. We have this bracket here on the side of the gun, which when I stand it up, that bracket matches up with this. We have a little spring-loaded locking retainer. And that snaps on like so and allows the belt to feed nice and cleanly into the gun. This system doesn't apparently have a lot of strength to pull a belt, so it's important to keep the belt well coiled in the box, close to the gun. You don't want to have an empty belt just hanging out of the gun, or you'll invite malfunctions. All right, let's move on to some disassembly. Underneath the shoulder rest on the butt plate, we have this little corrugated plug. I'm going to push that in and rotate it 90 degrees, which will unlock it and allow it to come out. I can remove the recoil spring and guide rod and that cap. Next up, I'm going to take off the barrel. This actually has a quick change barrel, and this magazine well cover is the handle for it. So I'm going to take this and pull it over towards you. There we go. Rotate it like that. That unlocks the barrel, and the barrel just slides right out. If you have ever seen a Bren gun barrel, this will all look extremely familiar, because ZB26, ZB30, Bren gun all use exactly this same style of gas block and locking lug. As I said, the carry handle here is fixed. It doesn't fold to one side or another. The bipod is also very much Bren-like, and I can rotate this 90 degrees, take it off, although I'm going to leave it on there for the moment because it's convenient to hold the gun up. In order to get the guts of the gun out, we have a pretty slick system. I'm going to pull the gas piston back just so it's out of this gas tube, and then this whole thing just lifts out as a unit, like the whole internal, like there's an internal receiver and an external receiver here. So we'll put this aside for a moment. Now we'll go ahead and take the bipod off. Note that the bipod legs do extend independently, and I can squeeze that together and lock it up like that. I can now take the pistol grip assembly, release it there, and take it off the front of the gun. So this is my full auto firing system, where you pull both of these sears down out of the way. That's the semi-auto one, where when the bolt goes forward, it's going to trip this and pop the main sear back up. So in full auto, that disconnector is dropped down out of the way and doesn't do anything. This back lug here is the one that connects to the bolt, or that locks the pistol grip into the back of the receiver. So that's your release to charge the gun. And then the safety here simply lifts this lug up under the sear so that you can't drop it and can't fire. And there is also a sliding dust cover under here that I can take off. This just ensures that when the pistol grip is back, there is an opening here to eject cartridges out the bottom, but when you pull the pistol grip forward, there's this dust cover that prevents there from being a big opening in the bottom of the gun. Other than that, not a whole lot going on here. This is a stamped sheet metal assembly. It's got a front sort of trunnion in it there. Doesn't really have a rear trunnion. We have a tube in the buttstock for the gas piston, and you can unscrew that tube and take the buttstock off, but that's not a field strip sort of thing. I should also mention that this and these two lugs are for tripod mounting. I don't have a tripod here to show you, but like the UK-59 that would come afterwards, this could be mounted to a tripod to make it sort of into a universal machine gun. It's really pretty cool to have all the important working bits of the gun together in this very small little assembly. So we can go through exactly how this works pretty easily. Pull the bolt and carrier out. If you've seen a Bren gun or a ZB26, this will look very familiar to you. We have a little short stubby gas piston there, and then the bolt is of the tipping variety. So the locking surface is right back here. In the rearward position like this, the gun is locked and in fact fired. You can see the firing pins come out the front of the bolt face right there. It is spring-loaded. And then when you fire, so this will be up in a locking recess inside our big lump of receiver. When you fire, gas pressure here is going to push the piston back, and this hook and the camming surfaces on the inside there pull the rear of the bolt down, which unlocks it. Then the whole thing can cycle backwards. When it goes forward, the recoil spring, which is pushing on this, the bolt is going to hit the chamber face and stop. The operating rod / gas piston underneath continues to go forward, which pulls the back end of this up and locks it. So pretty simple system. We can pull that off. As soon as this is fully locked, this surface on the front of the op rod hits this firing pin right there and causes the gun to fire. So it's an open bolt gun, and it will close, lock, immediately fire, and then open. Now, to allow you to access the top of the gun, we can open the top cover. We can also open the other side of the top of the gun. It's pretty stiff, but there we go. That pops out, and then this opens up, and you can see the feed pawls here. So this is your feed pawl. It's running, has a cool little roller down here, and that is actuated by this angled track on the side of the bolt carrier. So as this is cycling back and forth, let's just take that out entirely for the moment, you can see that this track is going to cause this roller to cycle in and out, just like that. That is going to pull a cartridge, pull the belt in by one cartridge when this gas piston is cycling backwards. And then these two pawls are spring-loaded, so they allow a cartridge to snap over, but then they prevent a cartridge from getting pulled backwards. So that's your whole feed system. There are no moving parts on the top of the feed cover there. Get that out of the way. What we do have up here is a guiding track, and this front surface right here is what the belt is actually going to push against to stabilize. So when you're actually firing, these links are going to be oriented like this. They're going to cycle through here, and this little protrusion on the top of the link is going to sit nicely on this surface to hold the link in place while the bolt pushes a cartridge out of the link and down into the feedway. That feed pawl moving back and forth like that is also the reason that you have to have this cutout in the magazine. So we have a cutout for the front, the nose of the magazine right there, and then of course this locking catch for the back of the magazine. This is going to lock in just like that. This big long finger right here is our ejector, and that is longer on this 57 pattern gun than it would have been on the original VZ52. As the case gets shorter, the cartridge is kept at the front of the magazine, and the ejector there has to get longer to meet it at the appropriate point. By the way, here's a cool little safety feature. You can see this little square detent right in there. That is actually the back end of the detent that locks this handle in one of its two open or closed positions. And so when I have the barrel all the way locked right there, that detent is able to go slightly forward and lock into this handle, which allows me to insert a magazine. When this barrel is not fully locked, like so, I can't put a magazine in, which prevents me from firing the gun with the barrel unlocked. Because it can't run without this being down in belt feed mode, and this can't be down unless the barrel is locked in place, you have the same sort of redundant safety feature there. So there you have a completely field-stripped Czech VZ5257. One other interesting thing to point out is that the rate of fire is actually affected by the feed mechanism. So, of course, the rate of fire is based on how quickly the bolt can cycle all the way to the back and then come forward. The belt feed requires all of its energy for feeding to come out of the system, where the magazine feed has a spring in it, and it is actively pushing cartridges down, which takes some of the energy requirement away from the actual gas operating system of the gun. So while I have not actually fired this yet, what I have read is that you have about 900 to 1,000 rounds per minute when it is belt fed, which makes sense to me. That seems like a legitimate number. And then that goes up by about 200 rounds per minute when you switch to magazine feed. And this is something that is a known this is known to be the case on other guns that have this sort of dual feed option. The Israeli Negev actually has different gas adjustment settings for belt feed versus magazine feed. so that the gun doesn't run too fast with a belt feed. This is also part of the reason why the FN Mini-Me, especially in US service, has historically had a lot of operating trouble with magazine feed, is because without the pull of the belt, the gun is actually running faster than the magazines can feed ammunition, and that causes overruns and malfunctions. So this really was the last gasp of the Bren gun system. In fact, I shouldn't even call it the Bren gun. This is a system that originated in Czechoslovakia. This was the ZB26, which became the ZB30, which was used widely by a lot of countries. It was an excellent light machine gun, and then it was scaled down after World War II into these intermediate cartridges. So this would be the last iteration that would see use of this basic system, with the exception of the Finnish kvkk 62, which is it is a copy of this gun, with the one exception that it doesn't use magazines. Well, it's a mechanical copy, less a few of the features. The Finnish version doesn't have any magazine feed capability. It only uses belts, and it does not have the quick change barrel. It has a fixed barrel, and as a result, and they designed the bipod and the stock and the grip. A lot of the external features are designed differently, functions the same way, but it's a Finnish twist on a Czechoslovakian design. So those are even scarcer to find than these guys. However, thanks to the cool folks at Varstalika, I had a chance to shoot and disassemble one of those on a trip to Finland. So if you're interested in the cousin to the VZ5257, definitely check out that video. I'll have it linked at the end here. I think that'll pretty much take care of this one for us. Big thanks to the IMT for giving me access to this to film and bring to you guys. Thanks for watching.